Hi everyone and welcome back to Chess for Charity. In this video, I'm going to show you two really cool puzzles that were suggested to me on my Discord server. If you did not know, I have a Discord server. It is in the About section of my YouTube page, so feel free to check that out and to join it. All puzzles and all that kind of stuff would be really appreciated. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so this first puzzle looks kind of crazy. I have a bishop pointing down at my king and my queen. I have a rook here threatening to give mate in a couple, and it looks pretty menacing. Your job is to see if you can find the way to win this as white. Can you find the game-saving combination that not only avoids the loss, the checkmate between the bishop and the rook, but in fact wins the game for white? Give it a second. See if you can figure it out. So, I'll tell you the way I thought about it. The first thing I thought was, okay, I'm going to look at forcing moves. Forcing moves are the most immediate moves, like queen here, queen here, queen here, all checks. E4 is a check. And then I thought, okay, let's go one by one through those and see what makes the most sense. So I first thought the pawn move was the most natural. So pawn check, and after takes, if I can take correctly. After takes, I saw this and I thought maybe there's something here. There's not, because there's just not enough coordination between white's pieces to really do anything. Surprisingly, even though it looks like I can keep giving checks, the king just runs away. So king c6, how do I continue this? I check here. What do? Just run behind the pawns? Probably fine. I'm thinking about where else I can check. Here, here. The queen can interpose if they want to. And, well, not here. Because if you do interpose, I would take this. Right? But you get the idea. There's just going to be a lot of checks. That's going to be, if I can go back, that's going to be a win for black. There's too much material. I have a threat here of mate, so you have to keep the checks up. It's just not happening. And like this position is a good example. Just keep checking me. I just run around. I just say eventually I'm going to be here. I'm going to be okay. Okay. So that move of e4 does not work. That's the point of that variation. Okay. So I thought about that forcing move. It didn't really work out. I thought about this forcing move, queen here. Does that do anything? It's a good idea because I'm giving check, and I notice this square is taken away, that square is taken away. But these two are free, not really helping me out. So then you thought, okay, maybe there's a combination of these. Like check first, and then they take, and then that blocks their out square. So then you give check, something like this. Oh, it's so close, but not quite. Because, as you can tell, they have one escape square. Okay, we're getting somewhere, right? And this is the way you kind of piece together your calculations. So maybe this move e4 is important at some point, but maybe not immediately. Okay, what about just taking the bishop? Let's just make sure we get just the immediate move out of the way. I should make sure I say that right up front. Queen takes, it looks fine, but you're just going to get mated. If not mate, you're just going to lose quickly. If you go here, it's mate. This is mate. That's not a good way to lose. Ouch. And if you block, this is not going to be a good time, right? Don't take here, because if you do, what happens? Check. And what happens after that? You lose your queen. So there are little tactics in these positions you have to kind of watch out for. Okay, so what is left here? What is left to consider? Well, I mentioned this queen move, this queen move. We didn't look at queen e5 yet. Let's look at that move. So queen e5, if you make this move queen e5, what happens? It can be captured in two different ways. We have to consider both captures here. So if the king takes, it's kind of a cool sequence here. I have this bishop here. I have all these squares covered. And d4 is a pretty nice looking check. Where does the king go? They only have one place to go. King f5. And now, similar to what I mentioned before, we have this nice little trick. e4 check, and again, there's only one move here. You take, and look at the way that you're boxing in their king. Can you see the mate here? It's mate in 2. G4 check, and after takes is checkmate. You kind of box the king in, and then you mate with the pawn. By inserting this e4 check, you're taking away the out square. All the arrows on the board. You're taking away the out square. Pretty sweet, right? I think that's a nice one. Okay, so if you play queen e5, they cannot take with the king. We just learned that. Okay, well, they don't do that then. What if they take with the bishop? Does it still work? Let's see. Well, the conditions are slightly different, because now, instead of the king being here, I can look at this sequence of this check immediately, and it turns out it still works. e4 check. Okay, you have to take me. Now your out squares are completely blocked. Bang and bang. So, g4, and look at this mate. That's a sweet mate. Talk about an aesthetic mate. It's like a big capital H. That's awesome. And we can make a little tree. I think I did that in one of my other videos. Make a little tree. All the way to the rook. Sweet, right? Okay. So, it's a mate in 5 from that original position. Can you believe that? If somebody gave me this position and said, find the mate in 5, the immediate move is queen to e. Look at this. Queen e5. Stunning move. Absolutely love it. Everything is forced from here on out. I think the coolest move is to take with the king and then just show this whole sequence going out, starting e4. e4 is just an amazing move. You have to love it. At least I do. That's a nice mate. Okay. So that's it for the first puzzle. Were you able to get it? If you were, let me know. Let's move on to the second puzzle. Okay. So it's a simplified position here. We have, it's white to move again. We have a position where it's white has a knight and 2 pawns against a lone bishop and a lone king. So it's white to move right now. This pawn is under attack. This bishop is the wrong color, right? It can't cover this corner square. So a couple things to just note. And your job is to see if you can win this as white. There's only one way to win, and it's actually surprisingly challenging depending on how good you are at endgames, and endgames are incredibly tough, so no shame there. Okay, the first move here is to worry about this pawn. And you might say, okay, Frank, you're already losing me. How do I do that? I can't move the king in, and my knight, if I were to give it a check, that's not going to defend the pawn. That'll just capture the pawn. Well, when I say defend the pawn, I don't mean defend it directly. I mean defend it indirectly. If I just drew an arrow between this square and these other squares, you might know where I'm going. Is there a way to get your knight to this square such that you can defend your pawn indirectly with the threat of a fork? Well, yeah, but not in one move. So to kick off this puzzle, the first move is knight h5 check. And the reason why this is the first move is because this pawn is implicitly defended. You can say it that way. You can say tactically defended. If they take, you check them, that hurts, and you're winning. They do anything, and they're not getting this pawn. You're going to win this game, no problem. So knight h5 works because it checks and it leads to a fork. Important note, knight f5 does not work because king takes and there's no fork. You can't get to this one square and it just doesn't work, right? You can't. That's not how knights work. Okay. So knight h5 check. Now what do you do if you're black? Well, let's kind of talk about the obvious. You don't take. We just showed that. You can't go forward. And then let's just say you have 2 choices. You either go to the F file, so really 3 squares, but 2 ideas. You go to the F file or you go to the H file. If you go to the F file, what's going to happen? I just promote to a queen, and this is not a puzzle. This is an easy win. So the same applies to F7. You go here. There's no stalemate or anything, nothing fancy. Just a win here, easy win. So the forcing line, really, the critical line, is what happens when they go in the corner. You have to be kind of careful here. And this is maybe where the puzzle starts for most people. Depending on your level and depending on how you see this, the puzzle can be quite delicate here. So when I saw this, I play a lot of Blitz. the first thing I thought, king h6, hold this pawn, try to rush this one up the board. That was my thought. Maybe you thought the same. Let me know if you did. Turns out that move does not work. Why not? Well, look at black's king. Do they have any squares? No. Okay, what does that mean? A move simply bishop e4. Just saying, I'm going to take this, and if you want to block, I just take that, and it's going to be stalemate. And there's not really much I can do about that. Maybe you think something like knight g5, covering this and attacking this. That's a sensible thought, but right here, just back up. I can't checkmate black with my knight, because in order to do that, I need to move it from protection of the pawn, and if I do that, something like this, I just lose the pawn, and this is going to be a draw, right? So all that is me saying you cannot play, after the king goes to the corner, you cannot play king h6 because a bishop move will eventually take out this pawn and it will be a draw. So what is the move then in this position? Do you play the knight in, defend the pawn? That seems right? It seems sensible. Again, it's not right. Now, why not? It's not just about right and wrong. It's about why, right? In chess, you don't want to just memorize. You have to understand, just like a lot of things in life. So this is great. It attacks the bishop. It defends the pawn. Wonderful. Bishop b3, angling for this same idea. It's just they're going to try to liquidate all material and get a draw. And there's not much you can do about it. You want to try to protect this square, this diagonal, by playing f5. That's fine. I'm still on this diagonal. And it's not that diagonal. And it's almost like a Zugzwang situation. Because if you move your knight, I take this. If you move your king, I can always take this. So you have to kind of be careful about what you do. If you make a move like this, move forward, I just wait. Right? I'm in no rush. You're not going to checkmate me with your pawn and king. You need something to give me the check. The second you move this knight, just for example, I can always take and then do this. That's going to be a draw. Okay. Kind of fancy. A lot of endgame technique here that I think it's good to be familiar with. So what is the winning move? Let's get there. Hopefully I'm not boring you to death. This is all very important endgame stuff. The winning move, f5. And you might go, okay, how is this different? I can still go here and still attack these pawns. Well, it's different because now it's just a little closer here. So let's say you play the same idea. e4, bishop e4, saying, I'm going to take your pawn. Well, now you can play f6 and get away with it. Because now you can afford to give up this pawn. In a lot of the other variations, you could not afford to give up that pawn. When I say afford, what do I mean? Well, if you take this, I just push and look at the coordination between the knight and the pawn. This pawn's going to promote and you're going to lose. And if you want to get really fancy, like bishop goes here, right? That looks nice. Here's a really fancy move. Promote to a bishop. Oh, that hurts. What do you do if you're black? You want to move here with the king? Look at, do you want to know how to win this? Can you win this as white? Of course you can. How do you do it? First you check. The king goes in the corner. You play here. They can't stop you on the dark squares. They do anything, and then you just mate them. Could you imagine playing that in a game? The amount of disrespect to put the bishop on the board like that. Don't do that. And also, if you play a queen, that's not stalemate. They have one square, and that's going to be mate. So, okay. So, now after bishop e4, you play this move. So, is there another move for them to play at this stage? Sure, why not? We have all this bishop flexibility here. Does it matter? Yeah, what if they take? Well, remember, the whole reason they take in the previous variation is that loses to a fork, right? Like this. Now, you have to ask yourself, can you win this king and pawn ending? Of course you can. If you don't know how to win this king and pawn ending, I'd recommend, I have a couple of early videos. One of my first videos were about king and pawn endings, so I recommend watching those and seeing how much the YouTube channel has changed. So, okay, so what else do you suggest here for black? After the king goes in the corner and you play f5, f5, by the way, is the only winning move. What happens? You want to play something like, I already went over bishop e4, you want to play something back, Maybe bishop f7. It looks good. Bishop f7 looks fine. But what do? Just the very calm king h6. And look at that. It's not stalemate. If you take me, it's not going to be stalemate. You have to be able to calculate what happens here. Take. 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 Is this a win or is this a draw? Do you know? Well, you better. f6. Look at the little wall you just created. You get to pick a couple of squares. If you pick this square, what do? King g6. Look at the configuration of the kings. King goes to f8. Now what happens? I just totally blocked you off from here, 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 and here. You have only one place to go. I cover this square, protection of f8, and you win. You should be able to calculate those endgames. If you can't calculate them, that's okay. But if you can't, don't play this move unless you are willing to go into that endgame. So yeah, that's pretty much the main variation. I think I'll show one more time. After the king goes here, knight hop, king goes here. I think this variation is the coolest. Right here, captures, pawn push. Don't take the bishop. If you take the bishop, that'll be a draw. Instead, you promote and you win. I think a bishop is kind of the coolest, honestly. But yeah, so that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. 2 amazing puzzles from 2 great people from Discord. I really appreciate all the feedback that I'm getting. It's really helping me with the channel, which is helping charity, which makes me very happy to help the world, spreading the amazing game that I love. So that is it for now. I appreciate if you subscribe. All that helps me so much. So yeah, but thank you so much. Bye.